Hello and welcome back to the TransferFlow, and on today's episode, Chelsea are linked to Rafael Leão, but why should the Blues steer clear of the Portuguese? Jamie Gittens could be a move for Arsenal, but how should the Gunners approach the winger market this summer? Ruben Amorim, should he leave Manchester United? And Rodrygo, could Liverpool grab him from Real Madrid, and how much should they be willing to pay? That's all on today's episode of the TransferFlow. Okay, so we're back for another Monday edition of the Transfer Flow, and we're taking a little break from our rebuilds just for a week. We want to get our ducks in a row for Spurs because, believe it or not, the rebuilds require a lot of work.
They're going to quack me up either way.
Ted Knutson, it's good to see you, despite that. It's good to see you again, I should say. This is the second time in a few days I've seen you. I've just about recovered from the previous time I've seen you.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ted Knutson. I am the bald guy that might seem a bit arrogant, but you realize at the end that I'm well informed and confident. Possibly because I've been working in this space for the last 20 years, and I've actually done this job professionally, and regularly receive DMs from team people lately who are like, "When are you going to do our team rebuild? We would love to see it for free, of course."
Yeah,
like, you cheeky fuckers.
it's better than the other way round, right? You know, because they could have been like, well, you seemed very knowledgeable and confident, but actually you turned out just to be arrogant. Like, that is the way it normally goes with a lot of people behind the scenes in football, I think, right?
Most of my life in England has been that way, but usually I come out the other side. But sometimes they just remain idiots for the rest of their lives. So I don't know. It's not up to me. I just give my opinions. You guys take them for what they are. Occasionally we end up saying that Kvara is a bit overpriced and PSG end up in the Champions League. So there you are.
Sure. Well, look, today we've actually got some juicy rumors. We thought that we'd do a little whip round because some stuff is starting to get confirmed. Some stuff looks like it's close to getting confirmed. So we thought today we'd kick off with Rafael Leão, who could be on his way to Chelsea this summer. Now, Rafael Leão, he's been rumored to be on his way out in Milan for a while. He was linked with Barcelona last summer. We had thoughts about that in the newsletter. He's now 25. I think he might turn 26 this summer. He's a player we all like.
Do we
not? Like, look, I really like hit cards on the table. I really like Rafael Leão. My concerns about Rafael Leão are like this. A couple of years ago, he looked like he was on a path to becoming like one of the world's best. And now he is closing in on 26, and his numbers have taken a little bit of a drop. Now, they're still very good. He's still at about 0.6 expected goals and assists per 90. He's an excellent, excellent ball carrier. Like, he carries the ball into the penalty area a lot. He can really drive your team up the field. What he doesn't do is that much defensive work. And the question is, I'll go on.
That much is a very weight-bearing term around Rafael's defensive work. I just want to flag that up. Like, you could just shunt that to the side. If we were some other show that was less informed and more headlines, we would probably be like, yeah, he's great on the ball. Who wouldn't want a player just like this?
Sure. And I mean, like, when you watch him, he does just have game-changing ability. Like, it's absolutely undeniable. He's tremendously exciting. He's really fast. He's strong. His ability to carry the ball into the penalty area, and actually his dribble success overall is shockingly high. Guys who dribble in this kind of volume are rarely this effective in the dribble. The problem is, if he'd been born, or if he was playing at this level like 15 years ago, then I think he'd have had his pick of big clubs. But now, a player like this, in my opinion, is like the one guy you might want to carry. And the top teams don't really want to carry anybody. But if they do carry someone, I don't think they want to carry a 0.6 expected goal and assist per 90 player. They want to carry Kylian Mbappe. That's my take on Leão.
Well, even Kylian Mbappe's last great head coach, who is now in the Champions League final, did not want to carry Kylian Mbappe. He's trying to encourage him. If you work for the good of the team will then do better. If these are the things, if you want the titles, you have to do the work. Rafael Leão at this point is pretty much not going to do the work. It doesn't seem like he's going to have that mentality change. Now, let's talk about the good things, right? Like, he is outstanding in the attacking side of the ball. But when we look at his pass production for Milan, teams that are usually pretty well coached, have good players around them in a good quality, not great quality league, he's obviously excellent at creating for teammates, at being that kind of zone mover type. But he's in like just the basement for possession adjusted pressures. Like he just does not do any defensive work, and his attitude has really fucked with multiple of their coaches in Milan. Like not being able to get him to work, and also having other players align with him in kind of the dressing room has caused huge problems behind the scenes in Milan over the last couple of years. Now, it's not to say that he's not wildly talented, but in all of England right now, it feels like we are at a recession point where you cannot carry a player in any top half team who doesn't want to do the defensive work. And if they are, as you said, they need to be like top 10 attacker in the world, which he's not.
Yeah, agreed. And I just think that, like, I think Barcelona obviously couldn't afford him, but it's a good thing he didn't go there, because I think that their football would have kind of fallen apart if they didn't have a real tryhard in the front line in the form of Rafinha to kind of balance out the fact that you've got Yamal and Lever who are working, but they're not like gifted defensive players in the front line. I just don't really understand. Like Chelsea, I think is kind of one of the, it's like the last team that I would recommend.
No. I love this for Chelsea.
What more really exciting, super talented guys who don't like it when the ball is lost. Just Chelsea are going to become one of those teams that are kind of like, when we have the ball, we're amazing. I guess like Barcelona, when we have the ball, we're amazing. When we don't have the ball,
Yeah, but then their coach keeps playing more and more defensive because
I know. Yeah.
he's just seeing like the line go like this and this. We got to fix the defense. It's like, well, you might need to play to your strengths at some point. Yeah, I mean, I love this for Chelsea just because it's another huge overpriced transfer they could potentially make in the attacking space while not actually understanding the component parts of building a successful squad. So one of the huge problems about Chelsea right now is they can't build up from the back, which means that all of these attackers are half wasted because you got to get them the ball regularly. If they had amazing base build-up play and you knew that they were going to be like relatively defensive stable and just get the ball into the final third all the time, that would be a different problem. But they do not have that. And they also have made multiple attacking moves in the last, I guess, 18 months that you're like, ooh, those look terrible. And they continue to look terrible. So, why not another one is sort of where I'm at. But the funny part is they probably already have like the solutions to their problems around Strasbourg. It's like, who's getting paid for this and why is kind of my question at the end of the day. But yeah, at the end of the day, I love this for Chelsea just because I like to be proven right over and over again.
Sure. I mean, well, I enjoy that as well.
That was arrogant, by the way.
It's not wrong there. Milan are obviously a big club, but they're not a particularly good team. And these kinds of players often look pretty good on those sorts of teams. Like Milan are going to feed him the ball all the time because he's their best player by a mile. But if he went to Chelsea, I'd be like, I still want to give Cole Palmer the ball. I think Cole Palmer's better, And then you get to give things a go like half as many times a game. Like it just feels like there are players who step up to bigger sides and their output goes bananas, and there are players who step up to bigger sides and they just don't get as much of the ball, they don't get fed as much, and they become kind of peripheral. And I do worry that with Leao there, yes, they would give them like a real plus ball carrier. That would be great. But his shot selection is not my favorite. He turns the ball over a pretty decent amount. He's not going to do anything tracking back. I don't love it.
He's a high usage attacker that is very good, but not at the very best. And that's the best that we could say about him. And remember what Jack Grealish was like at Aston Villa, like the season that he was like outrageously good. You're like, wow, he does all of the things, but he gets the ball all of the time. And so on the attacking side of the ball, when he's your driver, and it's been this way at Crystal Palace a couple of times with different types of players. Right now, it's Eza. Before that, it was Wilf Zaha, who's apparently a very delightful character to have in the dressing room in Charlotte right now. So when I look at Leao, I think that yes, super talent, but you bring him into a super talented team, he doesn't have as much of the ball. Like, can you use him in the right ways? Definitely. Is he actually going to benefit from having a little less pressure from more defensives knowing that he's going to get the ball all the time? Also true. But if you cannot muster him into doing real attacking output, and you need to compete deep into the European competitions as well as the league on a week-by-week basis, that's not a recipe for success, especially at this price.
Yeah, so if this goes through, I would say to Enzo Maresca, give Luis Enrique a call and say to him, what did you say to Ousmane Dembele to get him to start working hard this season?
Suspended him for like multiple weeks.
Sure, but he must. But I just think that with some players, you must be able to get through to them. You must be able to say to them, look, do you want to win all the biggest trophies in the game? Because if you do, you are going to have to do a little bit of defensive work. But quite often, I think you see these players really at the tail end of their career suddenly click into focus and realize that they actually could have had a better career. Like this was true of someone like Balotelli, for example. Went through his whole career just being like praised for being such a super talent and never really bothered to do any of the other stuff that he should have done. Someone like a Delap, who was also super talented, had this late career like blossoming where he was like, oh yeah, actually, like football's a team sport and I should try and play it that way. And you think if you'd done this for 10 years, you might have actually had a better career.
Tarap feels like Zion Williamson to me, like in NBA terms. You're like, dude, just keep the weight off and like learn to be a team player and you will have a really awesome career. But, wait, just delay as long as possible. It's that delayed gratification marshmallow test, right? So some footballers get their first big contract and they eat all the marshmallows and they turn into marshmallows and their career is no longer staying puffed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's stick with Chelsea. And actually, we've got accidentally kind of a left wing special today because there's also Jamie Gittens linked with Chelsea. He's linked with Arsenal too. He is 20 and look, he's been suffering a little bit over the last couple of years because let's be honest, he's never played in a very good Dortmund side. Like this is the best Dortmund have been in a while. He's been playing rather less under Kovac than he did under Şahin. His numbers also a little bit like Leão seem to be going the wrong way. Like very limited minutes at first in the Bundesliga. He was like 0.5 expected goals and assists, then 0.4, then 0.3. But crappy team. And he also has some real talent as a ball carrier. Quick off the mark, pretty strong, really high dribble numbers, nearly 4 per game, and carrying the ball into the box a lot, pretty high success. What do you think of Gittens, and what do you think of him for these teams?
I like Gittens. So unlike Leão, I really like the age profile of Gittens. The stats are very interesting at that age. Now, it's not true that every Bundesliga player comes over and succeeds in the Premier League because the level of athleticism that you will face is certainly quite different. I feel this one's quite a bit more promising. He will do the defensive work.
Yes, he will.
Now the question is, again, price. What does the price look like here?
Well, apparently he's got a 60 million buyout if they make the Champions League, and it drops to something like 50. This is euros, and it drops to something like 50 million or slightly less if they're outside of the Champions League. Right now, I think they're a point behind Freiburg going into the final day. So that can make a 10 million euro difference. But even at 50 mil, it feels high.
It does feel high because there's risk attached to this. And as you mentioned, like the trending makes you uncertain. His selection from certain coaches makes you uncertain. I would say that it's much more promising than Leão. And the age profile also looks better than Leão. One of the things you guys will talk about in the second pod this week, which, if you're not listening to the second pod, it's as good or better than this one, is how much fun the European leagues are right now coming into the final days. Like there's competitive slots all over the place. Obviously Bayern have won that. Like most of the tops of the leagues are done and dusted, but the rest of them seem to be super competitive. Unlike the Premier League, which only has like 2 competitive slots, I guess, and they're both for the big money. So yeah, when we come back to it, getting super fast, very good dribbling numbers. Some questions about his physicality against top tier competition because we're just not seeing it right now. Maybe you watch his Champions League games, but Dortmund didn't have the toughest of Champions League runs overall, at least through the group games. So you're still trying to like find things to calibrate like his actual top tier potential. But the age profile makes sense. And the fact that he will do defensive work makes me a little more on board with this one. Certainly more on board than Chelsea's recent buys out wide.
I mean, for Chelsea, I'm fine with this. Like, this makes a lot of sense to me. For Arsenal, who've been quite heavily linked recently, I don't know. Like the idea that I think that Arsenal just need to sign a left winger and then basically never play Martinelli again, I think is really insane. Like, I still think there's tons and tons of talent in Martinelli as a left winger, potentially as a striker. As
we know how good Arsenal are at staying healthy, so there's not really a question to sign and not play.
But do you not think one of the problems with signing a player like this is like he does need quite a bit of work tactically and in his shot selection as well, my God. But even if he gets all the kind of mental stuff immediately, if he arrives and just grasps it from day one, it could still take him a while to adjust to the physical level, the different requirements of playing in the Premier League. Is that something that Arsenal want to do right now? Do they not want to look for somebody who's a little bit closer to complete, given that they're signing a peak age central midfielder and a load of their squad is kind of peak age to just entering it?
I don't know. Do you want to build like the dynasty, or do you want to build something that, you know, is for the next 2 years? Arsenal fans so often get locked into, oh, we're competitive right now. And the front office there is clearly like, we're going to be competitive for the long term. We've got these outstanding products that are coming from the Hale end. We've got, you know, 17 and 18-year-old kids that are breaking in, playing real Premier League minutes, and they're really young, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're taking squad spots and potentially saving Arsenal like hundreds of billions of pounds over the next few years, or generating that in transfer revenue. So I look at this and I say, you can't have it both ways. You either have to take some risk in getting some of the young players and build up your squad and hope they mature in the way that you want, or you just buy for right now, but you know that you're going to have a trough where potentially you end up, you know, looking at that sixth slot and hoping that England get it for the Champions League, because everybody aged out and you can't regenerate that all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Zubimendi as peak is replacing, you know, two guys that are on the wrong side of 30, right? So that makes sense. Like they're trying to sort of move things back. And I think that they'll keep trying to refresh and stay mostly around peak, much like Liverpool are doing right now. Liverpool had an awesome era where they managed things very well across their age curves. They kept their very best performers for the longest period of time. They had all of the internal data for that team to say, okay, these guys we think are going to have a legacy and they're going to be great for as long as they can stay healthy. These other guys, happy to sell them on, happy to move them off to other places. We need to buy and replenish to hope that, you know, we continue to stay at the top of the league. And this year they probably got a little lucky in that City fell apart and the Rodri injury was problematic. And then obviously Arsenal didn't quite get there and they had tons of injuries as well. Liverpool were the beneficiaries. You run the season again next year and you get the top two teams much healthier, and they probably don't win that title.
Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see what Arsenal do this summer. Like, it feels like they're going to have to take a couple of big gambles on forwards, because there was a lot of talk last week about Mikel Arteta saying that Arsenal were one of the best teams in Europe, or saying it was reported as him saying they were the best team in Europe. But the quote actually seemed to be something like, I didn't see a team that was better than us, or we were as good as anybody in the Champions League this season, which I think is much less of a controversial statement. One of the guys who they could be enticed into taking a gamble on is Liam Delap. I kind of want to hear a case made for this, because I like Liam Delap, big physical specimen, you know, playing for a crappy team this season, got a decent number of goals. But what would he come into Arsenal as? I don't really know. In the newsletter today, he was quite positive about him, but I guess I just don't understand like what the plan would be for him.
Arsenal look at their forwards right now, and they don't have a true center forward. They have two makeshifts and one guy that's lost his knees, and they don't expect Gabriel Jesus to actually stay healthy from any point forward. Like I don't think you can come back and expect him to play frequently. You'd have to super manage his minutes. Havertz coming off of a significant enough hamstring injury that, you know, came by surprise. It came on a break, which tells you that like there might be fragility there. Not to say that he can't recover and play at a high level, but when they look at it, they have no recognized true center forward that is healthy at the moment. And I don't think Havertz is true. I think that Havertz is a float that. They also look at the price put on Liam Delap for his release clause, and they say, even if he washes out, we can sell him on for the same price. The same price. As long as they don't screw up the wages, they can sell him on for the same price. If they think, and he does look like he's physically capable in this league, like when Sean Dyche goes down with Leicester and then comes back up, like he can buy Liam Delap and be super happy that like even if he washed out at Arsenal, this is the exact type of sort of prototypical beast forward, Chris Wood type that I need in my squad for the next 5, 6, 7 years. And they can sell him on no problem. So from a monetary business perspective, it makes sense there. And when you look at Arsenal's fragility in the front line and the fact that they really don't have any recognized center forwards that they think are going to play anytime in the near future, I don't think Jesus plays until like end of year, given his injury.
Yeah. I think they try and sell him this summer if they could, but they can't.
They can't. And they were happy to move him on last summer as well. Like they just know that he's not going to be, you know, a healthy starter for them for forever. So I say, look at I think that they need to make that move. I think that they're looking for options. And I also think that Arsenal, much like I was last summer, I had concerns about Nico Williams and I had lesser concerns about Šeško, but now they have significant concerns about Šeško as well. They look at both of those players. They look at the prices attached to those players. They look at their trending, which we talk about all the time. If you were good one season and then you were significantly less good next season, that price needs to go down, or you need to have a real clear explanation for the uncertainty around it. And Havertz, I think they felt like they knew enough about him and they felt like they had gotten confidence around him because he'd been playing in England. So they were okay in paying a slightly cut price on him versus what Chelsea had. When they look at those two guys, they're like, ooh. I mean, I don't think Nico's necessarily interested in moving anyway. And then Šeško, like, they just tanked the market this year. So Arsenal are looking for discount value buys while they potentially spend money elsewhere. They've already spent the Mendy money. If they get great sales, they might invest. But everybody looks at the center forward market right now for this summer, and it's either risk or things that you want to get on a discount.
Okay. Well, I've been intrigued to see it. I think it feels like Arsenal are or it had felt up till now, like we were leaning towards Arsenal getting a kind of 25, 26-year-old who was just going to come in and like score goals guaranteed, like Gyökeres kind of thing. So it'd be interesting if instead they're like, right, okay, we're going to get a project and we've got enough forwards that we should be able to get enough goals throughout the front line. And to be honest, that kind of should be true, right? You know, Odegaard's had a down season. Martinelli was pretty bad the first half of the season. No Jesus, no Havertz. Maybe next year.
They know they need to sign Saliba to a big wage package as well. So there's only so much budget to go around. They need to be careful about where that money is spent. What do you think of the flack that especially Jamie Carragher, who I actually know Carragher. Carragher's been following me for ages. I've met him, but he's happily sort of carrying the water for the critics of Arteta right now about Arteta saying these things, and also looking at Arsenal's performance over the last 3 seasons and how many points they've racked up with 0 titles. Next to City and Liverpool, who both have titles there. Do you think that this is Arteta's last year? For if he doesn't get trophies next year, then Arsenal should move him on?
No, not unless there's a better option available. Like, I mean, that's always the argument, right? Like a sacking's never just a sacking; it's a sacking and a hiring. And if Arsenal want to sack Arteta, then like that's fine, so long as they've got a plan for who's going to come in and do what he couldn't. Like, it is, I suppose, he's been there a while, and it is quite rare to see managers just get better and better and better at a particular club. Like at a certain point, it does feel like you do get diminishing returns. On the other hand, the first couple of years there were just completely rebuilding the squad. It's not like he's had the same group together the whole time.
For me, it depends on what the dressing room is like a little bit. And I know this is overblown in many cases, but if somebody is actually good to work with and the Wenger players loved this man. And I'm not sure that players love Arteta, but they do seem to respond to him. And so he's created a good dressing room environment. Is he managing up the chain? Like, do they like working with him? Does he listen when they're getting advice or how they talk about players? Like, if he's always fighting like insanely hard for his guys, like that's a Conte thing, right? And Conte burns his bridges every single place that he goes. But if Arteta is good behind the scenes and will listen and will take on feedback, which it seems like he definitely did in his first couple of years, including when he was starting, including when I think he almost got let go because like he really did struggle and it seemed like he wasn't learning fast enough for the group. Now, if you have a smart manager or head coach that is listening and isn't an asshole, it's best to keep them. And football has a hire and fire culture that is rife with guys that are probably good enough to stick around, but they just get rid of them because it's easier than changing the squad. It's easier than fixing your systematic problems across the whole club. But the reality is, if you hire somebody you know is bad or doesn't work well, fire them fast, and you have to have that ability inside of the contracts. All the other times where somebody's good enough and they're easy to work with and they're not killing your performance, like especially in the underlying numbers, like you want to keep those people, especially if they show the ability to learn and you can teach them stuff.
I think with Arteta, what he's always had from the beginning, even when I wasn't very impressed by his coaching at the start, is he's very personally convincing. Like he's always been a good talker in front of the press. It seems that he has done that behind the scenes as well, because again, even when things were going badly, the hierarchy were pretty positive about him, and players were coming out and saying he's completely changed the way I see the game, all this kind of stuff. So it felt like that was doing a lot of work for him in the early days. I also think that as a coach, I have seen him add new stuff to his game. Like, that doesn't mean I've got no criticisms. This season, I do think he was very conservative, but we've seen him try out new stuff. I mean, like someone like Miles Lewis-Skelly coming into the squad. Lewis-Skelly hasn't just been used the way that he used left backs previously. Last year, Arsenal had their best run when they had Kivior playing left back for a bit. You know, this season, the fact that he got to a Champions League semi and like kept the league just about going with Marino playing centre forward, I find all this like pretty impressive. And
Gabriel got injured as well. That's a big deal for them, kind of on both sides of the ball. He's played guys and he's not cratered their value. Like, you've actually seen, like, Arsenal could sell those two kids right now for like big lumps of money because people are like, oh, look, they're playing at this level, like they're super valuable. The other way that I would say it is, like, in hiring, look at how hard it has been for rich clubs to hire great coaches recently. It's really hard, which tells you there's a horrible supply of them, because these teams have more money than God in a lot of cases. They're paying big packets to get rid of the old guys that they overpaid for, and they're still looking for the next guys, and they're just like, I don't know, like almost nobody is convincing. And that's the other side of that tale. So if you're not convinced by somebody, like, why would you get rid of somebody that seems like they're pretty good and on the cusp? I think Carr's just making headlines because he feels like it, and because, you know, Liverpool felt like people were talking down a little bit about this title, which no one's talking down about your title. You actually won the title. That's incredible. You had a pretty good season, as we said, in the rebuild, because you didn't win multiple trophies. Like, I think that's true. We didn't have like 100-point season. You didn't have a 97-point season. You had a good season. It was successful. Great. You won a title. No one can take that from you. But in terms of like recent Liverpool teams, this would still be a downgrade over all the ones that we looked at in the past that were in kind of the same competitive space. So I think that, yeah, it's a little bit just creating noise, and it's a little bit Liverpool wanting to big up their championship, which they should feel great about.
Yeah, like look, I've met Caratu and all those guys. Like, they can't shake the thing that they had as players, right? Which is that they are hyper partisans and they just want to win, and so it's completely understandable. Plus, let's be honest, like, no media organization ever lost clicks by publicly shit talking Arsenal. It's the easiest fan base to rile up in the world.
Oh God. Even
so
when you're a fan,
you might as well do it.
Even when you're inside of the fandom. Yeah, we've done that before.
The last 10 years, I'm either like just super in the bag for Arteta or whoever it is at Arsenal because I'm an Arsenal fan and I just believe everything they do is wonderful, or I'm a traitor to the club because I'm publicly criticizing something they've done.
For those of you who don't like us hearing us talk about Arsenal, your team should sign some players so we can start off there.
Exactly.
Yes. Bring those transfers across the line so we've got an excuse to discuss them or shit talk them, either way.
Well, on the topic of shit talking and actually managers, I did think it'd be interesting to talk about Ruben Amorim today, because obviously Manchester United in the Europa League final, but then they lost at home to West Ham at the weekend, which is not a great look. And Amorim himself, yeah, they did. But at least Spurs lost to Palace, but they got absolutely fucking thumped. Have you looked at the stat line from that game?
Yeah.
It is horrendous.
That's who they were playing. Just a bunch of hoes.
Oliver Glasner came out and I was like, is Oliver Glasner just asking for this job? Because he was like, yeah, like we were all over them today. We absolutely destroyed them. And I thought, yeah, he'd be a good coach. But Amorim, he said himself, you know, look, I might need to leave if results don't improve, which I feel like is a guy looking at the weather forecast for Manchester this summer, looking at the weather forecast for literally any other place in the world, looking at the clause in his contract, seeing what he gets paid if he gets sacked, and thinking, yeah, fuck this. I might actually go and enjoy my life this summer.
My assessment is more like he's now fully understanding how problematic this squad is, and realizing what he got himself into, and being like, can I leave? Is there any way that I could leave earlier? Like, you know, I'll take the blame. It's fine. Can I get like an okay payout? Can I? Because I'll go back to a Champions League team in a heartbeat. You know that's true. We've seen his own team fall off the team that he left. So when I've been asked to comment about this, I think one of the things we've seen happen many different times in Manchester United in the last 10 years is you see some outstanding coaches go in there, really struggle, and then come back out and be like, yeah, we're fine. I mean, not Jose, because they hired Jose at the wrong time of his career and he's a pain in the ass. But other ones, I think they've really struggled, and they've struggled because they don't have the squad components to be great. Now, that's Amorim's perspective. United's perspective is something like, we're in 16th place. We have a minus 11 goal difference. Like, Spurs still +4, which is a lot about how well they played earlier in the year. We have a minus 11 goal difference in 16th place. We are far, far closer to relegation than we are Champions League. How much do we have to pay this guy? We didn't realize he was so dogmatic tactically. We didn't realize that he was going to just bury guys every single week. And we don't have a quick fix. When you don't have a quick fix, what usually happens as a head coach or manager and you're hiring one is you hire a club legend. But the problem is Ruud van Nistelrooy fucked that up for them as well. So he was so bad at Leicester City. They're like, well, we can't hire Ruud and we can't bring Gunnar Solskjaer back. Like, we could get Carrick out of Middlesbrough, but he didn't succeed either. Like, what are our options? I think they should put Roy Keane up top.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I would love to see it. Like, the thing is, there just isn't a good firefighter for them to go and get right now. You know, like, there are guys out there who are experienced coaches and can basically put a team together with nothing. So, for example, Allegri, but you don't want Allegri in your club. He's a nightmare. And if you try and sign someone for him who's under 29, he's going to throw his toys out the pram. He doesn't listen to stats guys, like, famously. He's probably not going to listen to your set piece guys. He's a massive pain in the ass. Like, there's nobody like this who they can just hire who will be... Like, a couple of years ago, they wanted Zinedine Zidane. That is really probably the guy they would still want, who everyone's going to respect, everyone's going to listen to, I think is a better tactician than he's got credit for historically. That would be kind of interesting. Also, I think refuses to learn English or doesn't speak very good English.
So French.
I respect it. But they've got 24 points, I think, in 25 games under Amorim. And now they managed to go and get Dorgu in January, who's like played as a left back and played as a right winger, and you can use him as a left wing back. But they've now got to decide, do we spend a bunch of money making this squad Amorim shaped, knowing that in 18 months, 2 years, we might bin him, and then we've got to spend a bunch of money remaking the squad. It's a real pickle for them, and I just think, like, maybe you just roll with it for a couple of years to save the sacking money and build out the squad. That would be my idea, just because I'd be like, you need to get younger and faster anyway, so just buy some young athletic guys, which you're going to do anyway, and you could probably resell them at small losses later. It's totally fine. Because I just don't see the guy out there who's perfect for them. Like, what are they going to do? Go and take a gamble on, like, Cesc Fabregas or something? I don't get it.
Leverkusen are looking at it. Arsenal are probably going to pay very close attention to what happens there. Our advice since last summer, and probably for the last decade, is United have to take their medicine. And their medicine is either time or money. And that's it. There's no way to solve this. And you could rebuild that squad so that it is a better squad without being purely Amorim shaped. I think that's something that I would sort of steer toward. He might be slightly unhappy, but what are you going to do? You're going to leave? You're going to leave, and we're going to leave you under contract in, gardening leave for the rest of time, because they have proven that they are willing to sit on this now. Like, they will play hardball across any amount of money. That's a different Man United than I think used to be present as well. Yeah, I think that Amorim has to just chill out and respect that this is the job that you signed up for. Do your best obviously, they're in it. It is baffling, by the way, that you have the 16th and 17th place Premier League teams that are playing for the Europa League final. Like, that seems so absurd in any league context. I mean, even Bologna, who looked horrific earlier in the year, are like right on the cusp of a Champions League spot back in Italy, and you're like, oh, okay, so they're better than we thought, despite losing a bunch of players and despite losing Thiago Motta to Juve. Manchester United and Tottenham are not better than anybody thought at any point, but they're still in the Europa League finals. You're like, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of soft and squishy teams, but the fact that England are getting these extra CL slots must drive the rich European teams insane. You're like, oh, like they needed more money to go play and batter us.
This is the one thing keeping the season alive, man. Like outside of Serie A or whatever. Like you potentially got Chelsea against Forest, I think, on the last day of the season, which could be a Champions League place decider for them. And you might have Ange versus Amorim to see who gets their P45, like at the end of the Europa League final. I think this is super, super fun. It's not fun for Amorim, but at the same time, man, you took this job. It was not just money to coach. It was money to wear the failures of 15 years of how the club has been run. So you've just got to go out there and take it from the media all the time and suffer. That's your job. Suffer and suffer and suffer, and then you get rewarded. That's what the money's for.
That's what the money's for.
Is my attitude.
Yep.
So stop crying.
You're Peggy. That's what the money's for, Ruben. Just accept it. Exactly. So, pal, did you see the Forest and Marinakis this weekend?
God, what is this now?
Oh, he came on to the pitch at full time, sort of 2-2, like remonstrating at Nuno because they finished 2-2 against Leicester City, and almost nobody's actually not swished Leicester in recent. And I mean, it's not a surprise, but then he had to release a statement behind it because, they are 1 point behind Villa now for that 6th Champions League slot that England appear to be getting. Mm-hmm. And I could understand some frustration about it, because they've been terrible the back half of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like,
you don't belong on the pitch.
Just put all these results in a blender and then you're not complaining so much. Like, yeah, it sucks, but should Forest be in this situation anyway? No, of course they shouldn't. Shut up. Like Marinakis. So we had a thing. Oh God, when I was at FD, like we made a video about him and just like purely based on facts about his past as a businessman.
His Wikipedia controversial incidents is outrageous.
And guess who made a call? Guess who made a call to Sky and got it taken down? Like, guess who did that? Perfectly. Look, obviously we can't say anything that would get us in legal trouble, but what I can say, because it's personal opinion, is I think he's a tit. So, not a big fan.
That's so gentle from you.
Well, I don't know him personally.
You don't want to be sued?
Would I get sued or would you get sued?
I have no idea, and let's not explore that. Did you notice which team is in 8th?
Which team is in 8th? It will be... No, I don't know.
Starts with B.
Brighton.
You bees!
Shit, really?
Yeah, baby. 4 wins in a row.
God. Should start watching the Premier League one of these days. Okay, well, good for them. Beating United 4-3. They're great. Again, this is a great season to end well if you're an upper mid-table manager. In my opinion, I'd be like, fucking hell, I could end up anywhere. Ancelotti's going off to Brazil, so maybe there's a managerial job for me out there. Man,
you remember when Wenger was pictured on the beach, sort of lying like one of your French girls at that World Cup in 2014? I feel like Ancelotti's going to have that every day of the week.
He deserves it. He's not. He's going to walk up and down the Copacabana in a full suit and a sweater vest.
Yeah, and allegedly it's not going to happen, right? Because they want him to be present more often. That was like the
he doesn't want to go.
He wants to go, but they didn't like the fact that he wasn't going to be based there. He was going to show up for training camps and coach, and then fuck off to places that are not Brazil.
But just live in Brazil. You've been living in Madrid for long enough. Rio's at least as good as Madrid, in my opinion, significantly better. Just live in Rio, you baby. I don't know. Look,
just keep me out of this. You're just you're gonna get me. All right, sorry. I was trying to talk about Brentford, and you're.
That's fine. Look, Carlo, understandably, is looking for an emeritus position at this point.
Yes,
and I do get that, and I wish him well. That's what
national teams are. That's what national team positions are. They're emeritus positions. Everybody's looking for what Clinzy had with the United States, which was the cushiest, most horrible job you could possibly get. Overpaid endlessly. Oh, he's gonna redo the whole project. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and at least you can say about Carlo Ancelotti, unlike Jurgen Klinsmann, he's not a fucking simpleton, which is my Klinsmann take. Okay. Well, talk to me about Brentford. What do you want to say about Brentford? Every time you bring up Brentford, I say I like Thomas Frank, and you're just like, you get all jealous about how much I love Thomas Frank.
So I'm not saying that I've had any of these from this particular team, but I do get messages from team personnel on the regular right now. And sometimes it's like, can you not talk about that thing? Can you just like dampen the interest there? Because I didn't get anything about Thomas. I think this has been Brentford's had a very interesting, slightly confusing season, and their attacking style is outstanding. The Athletic actually ran a piece on their long throws, which I thought was intriguing. For those of you who don't know me, and I suspect there are a lot of you that are encountering us for the first time off of these rebuilds and stuff like that, I built a set piece program for Midtjylland and Brentford back in 2014 that helped the sister team, Denmark, win the league with 3 goals out of every 4 games. So 0.75 goals a game from set pieces alone. And we started to incorporate long throws as part of that. And we started to teach that. And then back when I came out into the world, I think we built a set pieces course that we taught like 100 professionals around the world, including many people that are employed in the Premier League and elsewhere across the world, on how to do and execute set pieces better. And long throws has been the thing that drove me nuts because teams were not taking this on board. And I've been preaching this for ages, and I have some stuff in my course that like makes my arm hair stand on end because of how broken it is and how cool it is. And almost nobody knows how to do it right. Brentford are still only half of the way there, but it would be really exciting if, as FIFA were looking to get rid of the throw in because some people don't like it for aesthetic purposes. Like the Premier League, the biggest venue in the world, like the world stage that's not part of the World Cup or Euros, then started just launching the hand corners. So Brentford have had success off of that. They've had success off of the set pieces. They've had success off of their transitions this year in particular. And I wouldn't say their talent is great, but Thomas certainly has a lot of the knowledge from that. And then they have attackers that they're potentially looking to sell and move on, although they don't have to because they're comfortably going to be in the Premier League and possibly even in a European position. I don't know. I think where Brighton's a little disappointing just because they are so stacked with talent. Brentford's talent isn't the same level as Brighton. They have not been able to spend and sort of circulate as much money, but the results are, and that's super exciting for people who like the underdogs. Bournemouth are the same sort of thing. They've swapped positions in the table, so Bournemouth are now in 10th.
Yeah, and Brentford haven't got that much for their money the last couple of years. Like I think they overspent on Van den Berg a little bit. They overspent on Carvalho, who they've got kind of nothing out of.
I think they've had injury problems for most of the year. I don't think Van den Berg is an overspend. I think Thiago's the one that I was most concerned about, and he's finally getting into the squad. So yeah, you would say that they've had a pretty rocky talent investment from last summers. How much of that is injury and how much of that is poor scouting is an open question. But the results from the previous era, you can have like a one down summer and not be great. Results in the previous area, outstanding. So Jensen's, Damsgaard, like all their Danish guys seem to be rocks. they're really good. Pinnock getting him out of the English league and then being just a regular starter for an excellent Premier League team is also really good business.
Crazy,
yeah.
Well, and even someone like Schade, who is written off now, is having a really good back end of this season. It does seem like they're very keen to sell one of their forwards this summer. Rumours today, in fact, that they're open to selling Mbeumo and Visser. I hope that they get really crazy money for one of them and that they can go and do something interesting, because I'd much rather have Brentford spending that money than, like Man United or something. Shall we take a quick look at Liverpool then? Because we promised another left winger. And look, last week, Kim wrote about Real Madrid's Rodrygo in the newsletter. Real Madrid apparently asking 100 mil for him. Lol, not going to happen. He's 24. He's basically never played his preferred position at Real Madrid. He played in the front two quite a bit before Mbappe arrived. He's played on the right quite a bit this season. So he's an intelligent player. I really like this player. The question is, like, who's the real Rodrygo? Because about 2 years ago, right, he had that enormous explosion where his carrying went up, his dribbling went up. He jumped up to like 0.75 expected goals and assists per 90. He was at nearly 4 shots a game. It was crazy stuff. And it was like, oh my God, this guy's 21, 22, and he's absolutely exploding. And the last couple of seasons, it's obviously gone down a bit. Touches in the box have gone down a bit. To me, it feels like you can tell a very clear story about what's happened here.
Tell me the story. What is your take?
Okay, so, well, I think that when he was playing in the front two with Vinicius, he was obviously playing a much more central role. And I feel like when you play in that front two as well, if you're good at kind of everything, you get to use all those things in a way that benefits you. Whereas now he's playing on the right of a three, he's just expected to do more dribbling and ball carrying. And he can actually do that. His dribble and carry on ball value is excellent, but he's not super fast. He's strong for his size, but he's not that strong overall. I also think he's surprisingly good in the air, and they don't really make use of that either. But it's just a dysfunctional team, and he's asked to be the water carrier in that front three because he is, no knock on him, the least talented of that front three. So I really like the player, and I think that if Arsenal or Liverpool or City, someone like that, said we're going to go and buy him and have him on our left wing this summer, I'd be totally fine with that. I would not be comfortable with it at 100 mil. But at 24 years old and really good record in the Champions League as well, at 50 to 60, I'd definitely be interested.
Yeah, that price is hopeful. And when you put a price on like that, you're like, we're only selling him to Premier League teams, and we're only selling him to the top tier teams, and we're hoping that Chelsea come in and make a mistake.
Sure. Which is like 50-50.
You're hoping that Pep hears the rumor and is suddenly enamored of the fact that like he might want that type of player, but
sure,
you've got Marmoush. So, the fact that Rodrygo is so flexible means that you can convince yourself into situations that get you a little bit into trouble, or might get the player into trouble. He's like, oh, I didn't actually want to be there, but suddenly I look around at the front line and the head coach has a different idea again. And so I'm stuck with this. I think that at 50 to 60 euros, he's a very viable option. I think even at 50 to 60, the only places that would look at him would be like a PSG or one of the Premier League teams. He's not going to Barcelona. That Wirtz and Musiala are the choices at Bayern. So like there is no market for this price. And even a massive cut price. I mean, they've had him since he was a baby, since he was a young teenager. I've seen him in person a few times. I've always been impressed by him. His ball control in particular is the thing that I was like, oh, okay. Especially in flight ball control. Like it's a pretty unusual thing. It's very noticeable. I really like him. I think that if you were looking for a Champions League level kind of ball mover, versatile wide forward at the right price, he's excellent for almost anybody. The versatility means that you can swap him or use him in cases of injury or tactical problems, which is also like a really high number. I think he's like 85th to 90th percentile. Like he's just not going to get to 100th. But sure, the age makes it right too. So as long as you're able to negotiate from a position of, we have a budget restriction, we have wage restrictions, if we can fit him into it, that's excellent. But you're not getting convinced about, we hear the 100 billion label all over the place. And that's just people that are either definitely not wanting to sell or people that are going to really regret it at the end of the summer, because we've seen that recently too.
Yeah. I completely agree with this take on Rodrygo. I think he's an excellent player. I don't think he's a superstar. And yeah, the fact that he can play those positions, you're looking at someone like Nico Williams, who people are looking at this summer. His buyout, I think, is something like 52 mil, something like that. And his wages are even higher than Rodrygo's are. So you might be looking at these guys for very similar amounts of money overall. Well, Rodrygo's a little bit older, but a little bit more proven, and actually has a track record of being amazing in a way that Nico doesn't yet. Different kinds of players, obviously. But
what do you think, Rafael Leão versus Rodrygo at the same price?
Rodrygo, for sure. Yeah.
Chelsea, there's your business. Like tell Badad.
Yeah, I think you have to do that because Rodrygo's a not incredible, but a plus presser. He's a good presser as well. So yeah, I like him. He's a smart player. You can't really go that wrong with him unless the price is crazy. Okay,
I think my price is 55 to 60 million there, and
I think that's fine.
I think for Leão, like you'd be lucky to get you get a West Ham that comes in and like doubles down again. Like let me grab him for like 45 million pounds. Like Leão wouldn't make that move, but it's the type of move that we would see, like a middle tier Premier League team that wants to add some flash, that isn't going to compete for a Champions League position, but the fans are going to enjoy watching this guy for 26 to 30 matches a year.
Yeah, I wonder what you were saying before about teams kind of regressing at holding strong on these really big prices. Obviously, this is kind of what happened with Osimhen last summer, but I wonder if it takes a couple of summers for teams to realize that these prices aren't going to happen. Like you assume that some people might go out this summer and say, okay, well, we saw what happened with Osimhen, so we're just going to sell when we get a price we like. But it just feels like it takes the market longer than that to kind of catch up to reality.
I think that what's happening in Ligue 1 is going to scare the shit out of teams, and because of that, they're going to be willing to get cash on hand. That's what I think is going to happen.
Sure.
Because if you haven't been paying attention, Ligue 1 is basically having to spin up their own broadcaster. Huge risk because they couldn't get other groups to either agree to the deals that they'd already gotten on paper, but they were going to fight them in court, or because they've shot themselves in the foot on negotiations multiple times. So Ligue 1 is pretty desperate. And because of that, like the transfer market is a little shaky. The Last Diarra ruling is also a little shaky. So if you can make significant cash-based transfers soon, like you will probably do that, unless you're the Premier League where you know that your money's guaranteed and you're in good shape.
Sure. Well, it's an interesting summer to go and look at. Maybe we should look at some bargains out of Ligue 1 then, because you've got people like Boadi, you've got Monaco who are absolutely stacked with interesting guys. Lyon have got a couple of interesting wingers. Maybe we can take a look. I think we've got time for one more, before the end. So shall we look at Tijjani Reijnders to Manchester City? This was a rumor that was going around last summer. It's come back again this summer. He's going to be 27 before too long. He does have 14 goals and assists from midfield this season in Serie A. He's a pretty good passer. Sounds good, right?
Serie A is the Bermuda Triangle of midfielders with goals and assists. I find it to be very confusing. It has tactical space for a player that doesn't seem to exist in other leagues right now, which is kind of that goal-scoring creative 10 with a lot of creative freedom and not much in the way of defensive output. Because of that, I believe you have some takes on this particular player.
I can't stand this player. He's the kind of player I hate. Am I going to make this comparison? There's a Tielemans-iness to him, right?
He had his best season so far.
Yeah, great. Like I don't really have anything I don't hate Tielemans.
Okay.
But that kind of player I do find a bit frustrating because they have some influence in the final third. Tielemans is an excellent passer. Reijnders is not as good a passer, but he's got quite a lot of progressive passes and stuff this season, though not a lot of expected goals assisted. But these midfielders, who everyone talks about as midfielders, and everyone praises their goals and assist numbers because they are apparently midfielders, but they do any of the stuff that I want my midfielders to do.
There you go.
This is what annoys me. Like, his defensive output is nothing. If you brought him in at Manchester City now, he'd be starting as a 27-year-old with the same defensive output as you're getting from Gundogan this season, just in raw numbers, that is. So Gundogan will have more possession adjusted. It's just, he dribbles a little bit, but his success rate is like kind of 50%. So I don't want a central midfielder dribbling if he's only completing, like half or just under half of his dribbles.
It's a very dangerous place to lose the ball.
Exactly. So I just look at this guy and I'm like, okay, so most of this goal and assist output this season is him getting goals. Okay, that's good. But I would like him to have a bit more creative passing. If he's coming into a midfield that has lost Kevin De Bruyne, he's also 6'1", but kind of shitty in the air, doesn't mop up a lot of loose balls. I just look at him and I'm like, he's a highlights player. I constantly see him. I told you before we started that the headline was something like Man City linked with AC Milan Dynamo. And I was just like, do you guys know what dynamo means? And you watch his highlights and you think, oh, this is great. There's a little pass slip through the defense. Then you go back and watch it and you're like you said, there's tons of space for this pass. And it reminds me of when Rodrygo Bentancur used to put up chance creation numbers in Serie A. And I thought, well, yeah.
I liked him quite a bit more, to be honest with you. But I liked him more as a defensive midfielder, actually. I thought that
sure. Yeah. But he and Locatelli as well. Locatelli, when he was at was it at Sassuolo before he moved? Like, those guys had big chance creation numbers despite playing deep roles in a way that, you're right, you only really see in Serie A and in the Eredivisie, but the Eredivisie doesn't count because it's made up league. But I just look at him and I think this guy is not, he's not well-rounded at all. And the attacking stuff is good, but it's not like so crazy that I can live with the defensive stuff. I want him to be a competent midfielder, and if he can do the goal scoring on top of it, then great. Plus, didn't they just sign Nico Gonzalez to be exactly this player?
Sure.
So I just don't understand,
feels like an agent plan. Yeah, it feels like
an
agent plan. It doesn't feel like anything that City would actually be interested in. I feel very similar to you, as I mentioned. And the other thing I feel like funky about is that we have seen weird tactical teams. We've seen players move from those in Serie A to other places. And those weird tactical teams, the stats mostly stay the same. Like, Xerxes hasn't turned into a different player. He hasn't become like more dynamic. He hasn't become anything other than pretty much what he was before. And so, when we look at Reijnders, you're like, this is not something I would pay for to be in the Premier League. Unlike many, many other players. The promising sweet spot for Serie A moves is kind of that 20 to 23 range. Like, unless they're unbelievable, you do not want to pay for players that are 26, 27 and above, who do not have a proven history of being able to perform at the highest physical level in one of the great leagues as well. Like, because you're just uncertain how they'll adapt. And so the risk is, again, quite significant. Frendrup is another one came out of there. We actually did that move and did the scouting for it at Genoa. And we really liked him when he was young. He was outstanding as a defensive midfielder in Serie B. Now the question is, he's being rumored for like a West Ham or a Wolves. He might be good enough for that. I haven't watched him closely recently. I'm at least intrigued by that. And if that's a rumor, like, again, it could be agent based because these teams love to have Premier League teams that like their players. But you look at Kiwior, who had great stats in Italy, and he was young enough. You're like, yeah, I've no issues with that move. The price was right. Those are the sweet spots for it. You're looking at a 27-year-old. It's not exciting.
No. By the way, on this topic, did you see the rumor about Lobotka to Manchester United?
Little Stan? That would make sense.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I'd be again a guy where they were just like, I saw him likened to N'Golo Conte, and I was like, I like Lobotka, but you're in for a shock if you expect N'Golo Conte to turn up at your club, and instead you get Stanislav Lobotka, who like just kind of drifts around with the ball glued to his foot.
Diddy Jorginho, as like what we looked at him. Nikos, who's been here before in the early days, he was with me at Brentford and Midtjylland, and was also the director of recruitment at Vancouver Whitecaps, who are the best team in MLS right now. Nikos was the biggest Stan fan. Like, he was the Stan.
The Stan.
To defeat all Stans. He might have written a couple of poems, possibly a rap beat set to a different Dido song that wouldn't get him in copyright trouble. And when he was young, he's like, this guy can go anywhere in the Champions League. I absolutely believe it. Like, you might have to protect him a little bit next to him, but he will make everything run. Friend of the podcast, Scott Willis, he was looking at old Jorginho stats at Napoli. He's like, I cannot believe how outrageously good he was. Like, yeah, that's also true. Like, Carlos Ruiz, also back in the day, like we were like way ahead of the curve before all these players moved, and we were like, yes, we love these guys. And they didn't necessarily get their moves, but they have had really good careers. So you never quite know. The Premier League physicality is higher than anywhere else. So sometimes that does sort of lower the possibility or the potential of those moves at the top tier.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'd like to see him in the Prem, but
I think it's late. I don't think it makes any sense anymore. No.
Yeah, I don't love it. But also, yeah, Tijjani, the red-nosed Reijnders, like, I'm not a fan. Get him out of here. Stay at Milan. Like, Milan is a place where I'm perfectly happy for players who I want to forget about to spend the rest of their careers. Like, I just never need to think about AC Milan. Okay. Is that an episode? Is that a good note to end this on?
It's great for me. I feel like I dodged all the bullets. Everybody that has hate mail, send it Patrick's way this week.
Doesn't bother me. Ted, what do we want to ask the people to do today? What do we want to plug before we get out of here?
So ManDown is continuing to produce episodes. I think this week releasing age gaps and skincare. So if you're interested why younger women are dating older men, we do have an interesting conversation about that.
Yeah, we do.
We've started to do gambling on MLS and had a good first weekend. So that is our variance betting summertime, along with the Club World Cup, which is pure Wild West madness. And I'm so looking forward to that. It's been a while since I've had just absolute chaos to gamble on in the football space. So that'll be fun. And then obviously, we've got the TransferFlow newsletter, which is we will do Spurs later this week. So we'll do the newsletter Spurs this week. We will do the podcast rebuild next week. If you are not subscribed to that, do it. Tell your friends. We have had the biggest sort of feedback of anything that we've done in the last year off of our rebuild episodes and our rebuild newsletters. People love it right now. And we will give you the lowdown and the scoop on all the transfers you should give a shit about and all the transfers you should really be scared of and hope that your director of football does not pull the trigger on.
Yeah, and look, I work for the TransferFlow, but I don't write the newsletter, and I still read every edition of the newsletter because it's interesting and it makes me think. So highly recommend it. Thank you very much for listening or watching. We will catch you later in the week when, as Ted says, we will be discussing some of the drama around Europe, given that there's basically none left in the Premier League. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.